The great hall of the Velkar Empire was full of noise. Hundreds of alien officers stood in rows, their tall bodies covered in shining battle armor. At the center of the room stood Grand Admiral Thesik, the most feared commander in the Empire. He was tall, with gray skin and sharp yellow eyes. When he laughed, the whole room laughed with him. On the giant screen behind him, a small blue dot blinked in the darkness of space. It was a tiny human colony. The name on the screen read, Gravenmoor. "This," Thesik said, pointing at the screen, "is what the humans call a colony." The officers laughed. 11,000 of our warships, Thesik continued, are about to be sent to destroy this little rock. The laughter grew louder. Some officers wiped tears from their eyes. To them, this was not war, this was a joke. For years, the Velkar Empire had watched humanity from a distance. Humans were new to space travel. They had no advanced fleets, no powerful weapons, no fearsome reputation. To most alien empires, humans were simple, slow, weak, a species still learning how to walk among the stars. Gravenmoor was a small mining colony at the edge of human territory. It had no military base, no warships, no defense grid that anyone could see. Just a few thousand workers, engineers, and old soldiers who had retired there to live a quiet life. But 3 months ago, something strange happened. A Velkar trade ship had entered human space near Gravenmoor without permission. It was a simple smuggling run, nothing serious. But the ship never returned. No wreckage was found, no signal was sent. The ship had simply vanished. The Empire saw this as an insult, a challenge. They could not let a primitive species think they could make Velkar ships disappear and get away with it. So Thesik suggested a punishment. Not a real battle. That would be unfair, even boring. Just a demonstration. A way to remind the galaxy who truly held power. 11,000 warships. Enough firepower to destroy 100 planets. All aimed at one small colony. "Send a message to the Council," Thesik ordered. "Tell them Gravenmoor will be gone by tomorrow. Make sure the humans watch it happen." In the control room, a young officer named Vex stood near the navigation table. He was younger than the others, and quieter too. While everyone else laughed and celebrated, Vex stared at the data on his screen. Something about it did not feel right. "Sir," Vex said carefully, stepping toward Thesik. "May I ask something?" Thesik turned, amused. "Speak." "The trade ship that disappeared," Vex said. "Our scanners found no debris, no distress signal, nothing. Ships don't just vanish without a trace. Shouldn't we investigate first before sending the entire fleet?" The room went quiet for a moment. Then Thesik laughed, loud and sharp. "Investigate?" he repeated. "Vex, you worry too much. Humans don't have the technology to make a starship disappear. It was probably an accident, engine failure, a pilot error, nothing more." The other officers nodded in agreement, smiling at Vex's nervousness. "Besides," Thesik added, his voice turning cold, "even if the humans did something to that ship, 11,000 warships will answer any question they might have." Vex said nothing more. He returned to his post, but the uneasy feeling in his chest did not go away. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, a much smaller fleet of human ships prepared for departure from a distant shipyard. There were only 12 ships in total, nothing close to a real battle fleet. They moved quietly, without alarms, without dramatic announcements. Just simple instructions passed calmly between crews. Commander Elena Reyes stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the stars through the front window. She was in her 40s, with short dark hair and calm brown eyes. She had spent years on Gravenmoor, long before it became a mining colony. She knew every corner of that system better than anyone alive. "Status report," she said quietly. "All systems ready, Commander," her second officer replied. "The Velkar fleet has been detected. ETA to Gravenmoor, 6 hours. Elena nodded slowly. She did not look surprised. She did not look afraid. "Good," she said. "Everything is moving exactly as expected." Her crew exchanged quiet glances. Some of the younger officers were nervous. 11,000 enemy warships were heading toward a small human colony, and their own fleet was only 12 ships strong. It did not seem like a fair fight. It did not seem like a fight they could win. But Elena had a different kind of confidence. It was not the confidence of someone who believed she could outfight the enemy. It was the confidence of someone who already knew how the story would end. They think this is about firepower, she said, almost to herself. They think more ships means more power. They have not learned yet that space is not just empty distance. It can be shaped. It can be used. Her officers did not fully understand her words, but they trusted her. Elena Reyes was known across Gravenmoor as someone who never spoke without a reason. She walked toward the window and looked out at the stars one more time. "Send the signal to Gravenmoor Control," she said. "Tell them the final system test is complete. Everything is in place." "Yes, Commander." Far below on the surface of Gravenmoor, deep inside an underground research facility, dozens of engineers worked quietly around a massive machine. It hummed softly, glowing with a strange blue light. Wires and cables ran in every direction, connecting to large metal rings that surrounded the room. No alien spy had ever seen this place. No satellite had ever detected its true purpose. To the outside galaxy, Gravenmoor was just a mining colony. A simple, harmless world. But the truth was very different. For years, the people of Gravenmoor had been preparing, not for war, but for exactly this moment. They had studied old alien technology left behind from ancient ruins found near their system. They had combined it with human science, human patience, and human creativity. Slowly, quietly, they had built something the galaxy had never seen before. A trap. Not a weapon. Not a bomb. Something far more dangerous, because no one expected it. High above Gravenmoor, sensors began detecting movement at the edge of the system. A massive shadow stretched across the stars. 11,000 Velkar warships, moving in perfect formation, confident and unstoppable. In the control room, a young technician turned to Elena, who had just stepped through the door. "Commander," he said, his voice tight with excitement and fear, "the Velkar fleet has entered the outer system. They are exactly on schedule." Elena allowed herself a small, quiet smile. "Then it begins," she said. "Activate the field generators. Let's give the Velkar Empire something to remember." Outside, in the cold silence of space, the 11,000 warships continued forward, completely unaware that they were not flying toward a battle. They were flying straight into a trap that had been waiting for them all along. The Velkar fleet moved through the dark like a slow, endless wall of metal. 11,000 warships stretched across the stars, their engines glowing a dull orange against the blackness of space. From a distance, they looked unstoppable, a force so large that no enemy could ever hope to survive it. Grand Admiral Thesic stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, watching the empty space ahead. He felt proud, powerful. In a few hours, the small human colony called Gravenmoor would be nothing but dust and memory. "Approaching target system," the navigation officer announced, "entering Gravenmoor space in 10 minutes. "Good," Thesic said, his voice full of confidence. "Let the humans see what real power looks like." But as the fleet crossed the edge of the system, something felt different. The stars ahead looked dim, almost blurred, as if seen through thick glass. A few officers noticed it but said nothing, thinking it was just a sensor glitch. Young Officer Vex, however, noticed it immediately. He had been quiet since the meeting in the Great Hall, still bothered by the missing trade ship. Now, looking at the strange shimmer in space, his unease grew stronger. "Sir?" Vex said, stepping toward the main console. "Sensor readings near the system entrance are unusual. Light is bending in a way that doesn't match any known phenomenon." Thesic barely glanced at him. "Probably interference from the local star. Don't worry yourself, Vex." "With respect, sir, I've never seen interference behave like this before." Thesic waved a hand, dismissing him. "We have 11,000 ships. What harm could a little starlight do?" The fleet continued forward. As they entered deeper into the system, more strange things began to happen. Communication signals between ships started to flicker. Short bursts of static interrupted routine messages. On some ships, clocks ran a few seconds slower than others, though no one noticed at first. In the engine room of one warship, an engineer frowned at his control panel. "That's odd," he muttered. Power levels are fluctuating, but there's no reason for it. On another ship, a pilot felt a strange pull, as if gravity itself had shifted slightly beneath his feet. He blinked, shook his head, and decided it was just tiredness. Slowly, one by one, small problems began appearing across the fleet. Nothing dangerous, nothing alarming on its own. But together, they created an uneasy feeling that spread through the ranks like a quiet whisper. Back on the bridge, Thesic remained unbothered. He stood tall, arms crossed, staring at the empty space where Gravenmoor should soon appear on the main screen. "Where is the colony?" he asked. "We should be receiving visual contact by now." "Scanning, sir," the sensor officer replied. A pause. Then, with confusion in his voice, he added, "Sir, I'm not detecting any defense systems. No ships, no weapons platforms, no shields. The colony appears completely undefended." A few officers chuckled. "As expected," Thesic said, smiling. "The humans never had a chance." But Vex frowned, staring at his own screen. Something about the data did not add up. If Gravenmoor truly had no defenses, why did their scanners keep detecting strange energy readings scattered across the system? Faint signals, almost invisible, hidden behind layers of static. "Sir," Vex said again, more urgently this time. "I'm picking up small energy spikes throughout the system. They don't match any weapon signature we know, but they are definitely artificial." Thesic turned, his patience thinning. "Vex, are you trying to find danger where there is none?" "I just think we should proceed with caution," Vex replied. "This entire situation feels wrong." Before Thesic could respond, the lights on the bridge flickered, just for a second. Almost unnoticeable, but everyone felt it. A strange pressure in the air, like the moment before a storm. Then, silence. Not the silence of empty space, but a different kind of silence. The kind that makes your ears ring because there is suddenly nothing to hear at all. Every system on the ship paused for a heartbeat. Screens flickered, lights dimmed. And then just as quickly, everything returned to normal. "What in the stars was that?" Thesic demanded. "Unknown, sir," the sensor officer replied, his voice shaking slightly. "All systems report normal function. But for a moment, we lost contact with 3 ships in formation." "Lost contact?" Thesic repeated. "Re-establish communication immediately." The officer worked quickly, fingers moving across his console. A long pause followed. Too long. "Sir," he said finally, his voice tight. I can't find them. The 3 ships are not responding. Their last known position shows nothing. No wreckage, no distress signal. They are simply gone." The bridge fell into stunned silence. "That's impossible," Thesic said, his confidence cracking slightly. "Ships do not simply vanish." "I assure you, sir, this is exactly what is being reported." Far across the fleet, similar reports began coming in from other ships. A squadron here, a patrol group there. Small numbers at first. A handful of ships disappearing without warning, swallowed by the strange shimmer that surrounded the system. Thesic clenched his fists. He thought of Vex's warning back in the Great Hall, and for the first time, doubt crept into his mind. But he pushed it away quickly. He was the Grand Admiral. He commanded the largest fleet ever assembled. He would not allow fear to control him. "Send scout ships ahead," he ordered. "Find out what's happening before we lose any more ships." 5 scout vessels broke away from the main fleet, moving cautiously toward the heart of the system. Their cameras and sensors fed live footage back to the flagship. For a moment, everything looked calm. Stars. Empty space. The faint blue glow of Gravenmoor in the distance. Then suddenly the feed twisted. The picture stretched, bent, and folded in on itself like reality being pulled apart at the seams. A bright flash of blue light spread across every screen on the bridge, and then the scout ship's signals went dark. All 5, at the exact same moment. The bridge crew stared at their blank screens in stunned disbelief. No one spoke. No one moved. Vex broke the silence first. "Sir," he said quietly, "I don't think this is a malfunction. I think something is deliberately taking our ships." Thesic turned slowly toward the main viewport, staring out at the dark, silent space ahead. The confident smile he had worn just hours earlier had completely disappeared. Pull back, he said finally, his voice low. All ships, reduce speed. Hold position until we understand what we're dealing with. But it was already too late. A massive wave of energy rippled across the system, invisible to the human eye but clearly visible on every sensor. It moved like a living thing, stretching across space, surrounding the entire Velkar fleet from every direction at once. On the bridge, alarms began blaring. Officers shouted warnings. Lights flashed red across every console. "Sir, energy levels are spiking across the entire fleet." "What's happening?" Thesic shouted. No one had an answer. All they could do was watch as the strange blue light grew brighter, swallowing entire formations of ships one after another. Some crews tried to fire weapons at the source, but their shots disappeared into the light without effect. Others tried to retreat only to find their engines suddenly unresponsive. Within minutes, half the fleet had vanished. Then more. Ship after ship blinked out of existence, swallowed by a force none of them understood. Back at Velkar Imperial Command, far across the galaxy, officials monitored the situation through long-range tracking systems. At first, they saw normal fleet movement. Then, suddenly, ship markers on their display began disappearing, one by one, then dozens at a time, then hundreds. A senior officer stared at the screen in horror as the numbers dropped rapidly. "Sir," he said, turning to the council leader, his voice trembling. "We are losing contact with the entire fleet." The council leader stood staring at the screen as the last remaining markers blinked out, one final cluster vanishing into nothing. The room fell completely silent. "The entire fleet," the officer whispered. "All 11,000 ships. They're gone." 3 years before the Velkar fleet ever arrived at Gravenmoor, a much quieter story had already begun. Deep inside the underground research facility on Gravenmoor, Elena Reyes stood before a group of tired engineers. The room was filled with broken pieces of alien technology, salvaged from ancient ruins discovered on the outer edge of the system. Wires crossed the floor. Screens displayed endless lines of data. The air smelled of metal and burnt circuits. "We are not building a weapon," Elena said firmly, looking around at her team. "We are building a door that opens, takes something in, and closes behind it." Her chief engineer, a quiet man named Dr. Aris Patel, rubbed his tired eyes. "Commander, with respect, we still don't fully understand this ruined technology. We're working with pieces of something built thousands of years ago by a species that no longer exists." "I know," Elena said, "but we don't have the luxury of time. Every scan we've done shows the same pattern. Sooner or later, someone out there will see Gravenmoor as an easy target. We need to be ready before that day comes." The ruins had been discovered 5 years earlier, buried beneath the icy surface of Gravenmoor's smallest moon. At first, they seemed like nothing more than strange rock formations, but deeper study revealed structures far too perfect to be natural. Metal frames untouched by time, strange energy cores that still pulsed faintly with power, even after thousands of years of silence. No one knew exactly who had built them. But the technology inside told a clear story, a species that had once mastered the bending of space itself. For years, Elena's team studied every fragment they could find. Human scientists were not used to this kind of physics. Many ideas failed. Some experiments caused small but dangerous accidents in the lab. But slowly, piece by piece, they began to understand. The ruins were the remains of an ancient defense network. Not weapons that destroyed enemies, but devices that could fold a section of space inward, pulling anything inside into a separate, hidden pocket of reality. A space within space. Frozen. Sealed. Completely cut off from the rest of the universe, but not destroyed. "It's not a weapon of death," Dr. Patel had said the day they finally understood the design. "It's a weapon of patience." Elena had smiled at that. "Then it's perfect for us. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They did not have the biggest fleets or the most advanced weapons. But humans understood patience. They understood planning. They understood how to wait quietly while building something far more powerful than brute force." Over the next 2 years, Elena's team rebuilt the ancient technology piece by piece, combining it with human engineering. They built massive ring generators, hidden beneath the colony's surface and disguised as simple mining equipment. To anyone watching from space, Gravenmoor looked like nothing more than an ordinary mining outpost. Drills, transport ships, storage facilities. But beneath the surface, an enormous gravity fold system was slowly taking shape. The final test came when the Velkar trade ship entered their system without permission, 3 months before the main fleet's arrival. Elena had given a simple order. Activate the smallest field. Let's see if it really works. It did. The trade ship vanished instantly, pulled into the pocket dimension without a sound, without wreckage, without warning. The system worked exactly as designed. That single test told Elena everything she needed to know. And it also told her something else. The Velkar Empire would not simply forget. An empire built on pride could not allow a small human colony to make one of their ships disappear without consequence. She knew retaliation was coming. She just didn't know how big it would be. When their scouts reported 11,000 warships heading toward Gravenmoor, even Elena felt a moment of doubt. The system had only ever been tested on a single ship. Could it really handle an entire invasion fleet? We built it to scale, Dr. Patel reminded her during their final preparations. The generators can expand the field as much as needed, as long as we have enough power. And do we have enough power? Elena asked. Dr. Patel hesitated. Theoretically, yes, but this will be the first time we push the system to its true limit. Elena nodded slowly. There was no turning back now. Either the plan worked, or Gravenmoor would face the full force of an angry empire with nothing left to stop it. On the day the fleet arrived, every engineer in the facility worked in complete silence, eyes locked on their screens, hands ready at the controls. Elena stood at the center of the room, watching the live data feed showing the massive Velkar fleet entering the outer system. Activate primary field, she said calmly. The massive rings buried beneath Gravenmoor's surface began to hum, slowly building power. Deep underground, the entire facility vibrated gently as energy surged through the system. Far above, in space, the strange shimmer the Velkar officers had noticed earlier was the very beginning of the field activating, bending light, twisting gravity, slowly preparing the trap. As the fleet moved deeper into the system, Elena gave the next command. Expand the field. Begin slow encirclement. The engineers worked quickly, carefully adjusting the field's reach without alerting the enemy too soon. They wanted the fleet fully inside the system before the real trap closed. When the first few ships disappeared, those Vex had noticed losing contact. It was simply the outer edge of the field beginning to activate naturally as ships crossed its boundary. It's working, Dr. Patel whispered, watching the data stream in. The field is holding stable even with multiple ships entering at once. Elena allowed herself a small breath of relief, but she did not relax. Continue expanding. We need the entire fleet inside before we close it. Minutes passed. More ships vanished. The Velkar officers, confused and afraid, tried retreating, but it only sped up their fate, pulling them deeper into the expanding field. Finally, when nearly the entire fleet had entered the system, Elena gave her final order. Close the field, all sections, now. The engineers activated the last sequence. A massive wave of energy spread outward from Gravenmoor, surrounding the entire system in an instant. Every remaining Velkar ship, all at once, was pulled into the pocket dimension, sealed away, frozen, completely cut off from the rest of the universe. On the surface, the sky above Gravenmoor flashed bright blue for a brief moment, then returned to its normal, calm darkness. Inside the control room, silence fell. No one cheered. No one celebrated. They simply stared at their screens, watching as the data confirmed what they already knew. All 11,000 ships were gone. Not destroyed, not killed. Simply removed. Held safely within a space no one else could reach, waiting for someone to decide what came next. Elena finally allowed herself to sit down, letting out a long breath she had been holding for hours. It worked, Dr. Patel said quietly, almost in disbelief. We actually did it. Elena nodded slowly, but her expression remained serious. We didn't fight a war today, she said. We simply waited for one to walk into our hands. She looked around the room at her tired but relieved team. Gravenmoor was never undefended, she said. We just made sure no one needed to know that until it was too late. Outside, the people of Gravenmoor went about their day, unaware of just how close they had come to disaster. and unaware of just how completely their quiet, patient colony had just changed the balance of power across the galaxy. 3 days after the Velkar fleet vanished, the galaxy was in chaos. News of the disappearance spread quickly across every major empire. 11,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled by the Velkar Empire, gone without a single shot fired in return. No wreckage, no survivors found drifting in escape pods, no distress signals, just silence and a small human colony left standing exactly where it had always been. At Velkar Imperial Command, the council chamber was filled with tension. Council members argued loudly, demanding answers no one could give. Reports came in from frightened officers, confused engineers, and panicked analysts, but none of them could explain what had truly happened at Gravenmoor. In the middle of the chaos sat Vex, the young officer who had once tried to warn Grand Admiral Thesic. He had survived only because his ship had been part of a smaller support group, ordered to stay just outside the system's edge during the final approach. He had watched, helpless, as the entire main fleet disappeared before his eyes. Now, sitting before the council, Vex told them everything he had seen. The strange shimmer in space, the small energy spikes, the sudden silence, and finally, the massive wave of blue light that swallowed the fleet whole. It wasn't random, Vex said firmly. It was controlled, deliberate. Someone built something capable of doing this and they used it perfectly. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, the word human was no longer spoken with mockery in that room. "We need answers," the council leader said finally. "Send a diplomatic envoy to Gravenmoor immediately. Demand an explanation." Vex was chosen to lead the mission, partly because he was one of the few who had witnessed the event firsthand, and partly because the council hoped his earlier warning might earn him some trust with the humans. 3 days later, a single unarmed Velkar diplomatic ship approached Gravenmoor cautiously. This time there was no laughter, no arrogance, no display of overwhelming power. Just one small ship, moving slowly, surrounded by silence. As the ship entered the system, Vex stared out the window, half expecting the same strange shimmer to appear again. But space remained calm and quiet, as if nothing unusual had ever happened there. A simple message reached them from the colony below. "You may land. You will be expected." Vex swallowed nervously as the ship descended toward Gravenmoor's surface. From orbit, the colony looked exactly as it always had. Quiet streets, simple buildings, mining equipment scattered across the landscape. Nothing about it suggested the kind of power capable of erasing an entire invasion fleet. When the ship landed, a small group of humans waited outside, including Commander Elena Reyes, calm and composed as always. Vex stepped down from the ship slowly, unsure of what to expect. He had imagined many possibilities: anger, threats, perhaps even another trap. Instead, he found something far more unsettling: complete calm. "Officer Vex," Elena said, stepping forward. "We've been expecting your visit." "You know my name?" Vex asked, surprised. "We monitored your communications during the fleet's approach," Elena replied simply. "You were the only one who questioned what was happening. That told us something important about you." Vex hesitated, unsure how to respond. He had come expecting to demand answers, but standing before this calm, quiet woman, he suddenly felt like the one being questioned instead. "I'm here on behalf of the Velkar Council," he said, trying to regain his composure. "They demand to know what happened to our fleet. 11,000 ships do not simply vanish." Elena studied him for a moment before answering. "They didn't vanish," she said. "They were moved." "Moved where?" "Somewhere safe," Elena said. "Untouched, unharmed, simply paused." Vex blinked, struggling to process her words. "You're saying the entire fleet still exists?" "Every ship," Elena confirmed. "Every crew member. All exactly as they were the moment they entered our system. We don't kill out of necessity, Officer Vex. We only act when we must protect what is ours." The diplomatic team exchanged stunned looks. They had expected destruction, perhaps even a hidden act of war. Instead, they were being told the entire fleet had simply been stored. "Why?" Vex finally asked. "Why not destroy us completely if you had the power to do so?" Elena's expression remained calm, but her voice carried quiet weight. Because that's not who we are. We didn't build this system to wage war. We built it to end one before it could truly begin. She motioned for Vex to follow her toward the underground facility, where Dr. Patel and the rest of the engineering team waited near a massive control panel. On the screen above them, data streams showed the location of the entire trapped Velkar fleet, completely intact, suspended within the pocket dimension exactly as Elena had described. "We are prepared to return your fleet," Elena said. "Fully intact, fully powered, but understand this clearly. This is not a gift. It is a warning." Vex stared at the data, overwhelmed by what he was seeing. A warning of what? "That strength is not always measured by the size of a fleet," Elena said. "It is measured by patience, by preparation, and by the choice to act only when truly necessary. Your empire saw a quiet colony and assumed weakness. That assumption nearly cost you everything." She turned to face him directly. "Tell your council this. Humanity does not seek war. We do not wish to conquer, and we do not wish to destroy. But we will always be ready to defend what is ours, in ways your empire never expected." Vex remained silent for a long moment, processing everything he had just witnessed. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I'll deliver your message," he said. 3 days later, the entire Velkar fleet reappeared exactly where it had vanished. Every ship powered down, drifting silently in space, completely unharmed. Crews aboard the ships woke confused, with no memory of how much time had passed, only a strange, dreamlike sense of having been somewhere else entirely. Back at Velkar Imperial Command, the Council watched the fleet's return with a mixture of relief and disbelief. The humans had every reason to destroy them completely, yet they had chosen restraint instead. It was a message far more powerful than any weapon could have delivered. From that day forward, the story of Gravenmoor spread quickly across the galaxy. Other empires who once viewed humanity as simple and unimportant began to look at them differently. Diplomats spoke more carefully. Trade negotiations became more respectful. No one dared assume human colonies were as helpless as they appeared. On Gravenmoor itself, life continued quietly, almost as if nothing extraordinary had happened at all. The mining operations continued. The colony grew slowly, steadily, exactly as it always had. Elena Reyes returned to her usual duties, calm and unbothered by the galaxy-wide attention her colony had suddenly received. One evening, as she stood outside watching the twin moons rise over the horizon, Dr. Patel approached quietly. "Do you think they understood the message?" he asked. Elena smiled faintly, her eyes still fixed on the sky. "I think they understood enough," she said. "Enough to think twice before underestimating us again." Far above, somewhere among the countless stars, word of Gravenmoor continued to spread, not as a story of destruction, but as a quiet reminder that true strength does not always announce itself with noise and numbers. Sometimes it simply waits. And on that day, the galaxy finally learned what it truly meant to laugh at Gravenmoor, and then watch in stunned silence as humanity simply smiled back.